All right, now I'm going to introduce our instructors for this class. First, we have Nate Lowe. He is the Regional Director of Customer Success here at Novarad. Nate has been with Novarad for 14 years. In addition to customer success and an implementation engineer, he previously worked as a PACS administrator and a senior imaging systems analyst at hospitals in Fresno and Seattle. In Nate's free time, he is a volunteer firefighter, a member of search and rescue, and a farmer. Next, we have Conrad Valencia, Regional Manager of Customer Success here at Novarad. Conrad started his career in healthcare at 18 as a file clerk in the radiology department. Since then, he's worked in a variety of positions, from patient transport and scheduling to a radiology tech and CT tech. Prior to Novarad, he worked as a PACS administrator and manager of imaging services. In his free time, Conrad likes to go fishing. Then we have Jonathan Deal, a technical support engineer and team lead here at Novarad. Jonathan has been with Novarad support for almost 6 years, starting as a bottom level support engineer and working his way to team lead. He was previously employed as a PACS administrator for an imaging center using Novarad PACS and RIS, and a 15-year Air Force veteran prior to working as a deployment and IT project manager. All righty, again, any questions that you have, put them in the chat. We will answer them at the end of the class. And now I will turn the time over to our presenters.
Hey, everyone. I see some familiar faces out there. I'm really excited you're here with us. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day. And I'm going to dive right in. All right. PACS Admin Console. I'm sure the majority of us here are very familiar with this. I'm afraid that some of you veterans out there probably know more about this than I do, but we're going to give this a shot. And like Jonathan said in the chat, if you're having a hard time seeing the screen, there's a plus and a minus in the lower left-hand corner for zooming in and out. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A option in the Teams window. So in the PACS Admin Console, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the Users tab, since this is the gateway into the product. First glance here, we have a few different columns. We have the name, we have the login or the username column, and then we have home phone, work phone, not generally used all the time, but if you need to input that information, by all means do it since it's available. And then we have the roles column, so we can see at a glance who is assigned what role, and then we have the medical groups column. So one thing that I like to show on this screen before we move on is if we click on the top, we can sort ascending or descending. And this is kind of helpful if you have a super long list. I know some of you out there have hundreds of users. So what I would do is I would sort by the name or the login and then just scroll down until I found who I was looking for. So the first thing that we can do here in the Users tab is we can create a new user. So I'll just click the Add button here. We have this checkbox here that enables this user. So how I would use that is if I have somebody who leaves the organization, instead of deleting them, because some people come back, I would just disable them, and you can see in the users list who has been disabled because they will be a lighter gray instead of this black text back here. Moving down, we need to decide what kind of user we're going to create. The first option is an existing domain user. So if we have a domain trust, we also use LDAP, by the way. If we have some sort of a trust between the Novarad domain and the hospital domain, we can utilize that to limit the number of times we have to enter our username and password. So I can click the little radio button next to the username field, and I can search Active Directory find who I am looking for, and I can select someone from Active Directory and say, okay, and it automatically fills in the information down here below. My favorite type of user. If you don't have a trust between the Novarad domain and the hospital domain, you can set up a Novarad user, and there's nothing wrong with this. It's awesome as well. So we just type in our username, the password duplicated twice, and there are password requirements, and it will let us know if we don't meet those. And if you are setting up new users under the Novarad user, it doesn't really matter under the domain user, but under the Novarad user, you're setting up new users, you can assign them a generic password like password123, and then you can give that password to the new user and then just check this box. This box will force them to change their password the next time they log in. Of course, we have the name fields, and I'm just going to remove the names here. And just to show you, the little red dots indicate that is a required field. All right, and here's the phone numbers and the email address. Up here is the medical group, so we have to determine what medical group this new user is part of, and also what kind of role are they going to have. So I'm going to start off by showing you how to set up, like, say, a referring physician, since there's a little more to the physicians than there is with a regular, like a technologist or an administrator. So I selected a referring physician under the PACS role and under the RIS role. And if you're all familiar with RIS, even if you don't have the full RIS, there is a physician record that lives inside RIS, and that's going to have, it's going to either come through the interface or it was manually input into RIS. And what we're going to do here is we're going to link this PACS user account to RIS, to the RIS physician record. So the way we do that is click this link RIS physician, and we can search inside RIS from here. And there we are. We'll say that's the physician record in RIS. If I can't find anything there, then I can say create a link new. So I'm going to double click on this physician record that I found, and we're going to get this pop-up box to fill out some more information. So last name, first name, obviously already filled out for us. Middle name, you can use that if you want. Practice address, this is helpful just for your record keeping purposes, and the city, state, and zip. Couple very important fields, so the UPIN, the NPI, and so on. And here's the box checking that, yes, they are a referring physician. And then we have some more information up here, the gender, the practice name, date of birth, it says it's optional. And then we have phone numbers. And this is where it gets very important. We have the fax and the email. And the reason this is important is because if you are using RIS to distribute your reports, we have to have a fax number or an email address. And then we've got some additional fields down here below. We can choose how they receive their stat results. And down here, we have the custom fields, which are generally tied to some sort of HL7, a custom HL7 message to display custom information. So that's that. And sorry, I forgot to indicate, we click update and then it links the physician. So that's how we set up a regular referring physician. Now we'll do something easy. All we do for an administrator is just click there and click create. So not too bad. The last thing I want to show you here in this user editor is the alias. I think a lot of times this can be overlooked. What this is when the orders come across from the EMR or from any other entity, sometimes we will get orders from multiple places. Well, the referring physician won't always come across the same way. What I mean by that is, let's say I'm a referring physician, ordering entity A will send my name across as Nate space low, right? Ordering entity B may send it across as low comma space Nate. And I mean, there's many different ways to send across a name. And the alias is to catch that. So what I wanted to show you is I've got the diagnostic viewer opened up back here. And I wanted to show you how to find how that referring physician name came across. So right here, we can see the referring physician column is empty. And this is our test server, so of course it's going to be empty. But I'm just going to open this study and show you where to find how that referring physician came across. So in the upper right-hand corner, I'm going to click on Menu, and then I'm going to go to Image, and then Details. And this is going to pull up this box with all of the DICOM tags and the information associated. So if we scroll down, we can find referring physician name right here. So you can see that this referring physician came across as referring one space Novarad. So what I would do in this case is I would come back to the admin console user editor, and I would add an alias for referring one. What was it, Novarad? I don't remember. Anyways, so this is where we would collect all of the different ways that a referring physician would come across. And then eventually, once we get all of those nailed down in the diagnostic viewer, they will all appear. So I hope that's helpful. All right. The next, let's see, edit. The edit button is the same as double clicking on a user. Remove is deleting a user. Authorize, not used much anymore, but it's just authorizing the use in RIS as well as PACS. So let's see, moving on to roles. This is the collection of roles that Novarad uses in our product. And you can see here in this first column, we have, you recognize all of those roles because you use them daily. The next column is to show how many licensed users each of these roles have. Now, with this being a test server, there's a ton of people in here regularly, so we have it set to unlimited. You may or may not see unlimited in yours. This column, the logged in column, will show you how many of each of these roles is currently logged in. And this next role is showing how long a user will stay logged in after a period of inactivity. So they're obviously set to 1 hour. So we can go in to any one of these roles here, and we can first change the timeout. So a funny little joke here, if you really don't like a group of people, set their timeout to 5 minutes. But I didn't tell you that. Under role members, it will tell you everybody who is assigned as the technologist role here. Another neat thing we can do is we can come in here and edit the permissions. So these are all of the default. This is the default way that Novarad set up the technologist. And an X means that they can do this under the name column. If we scroll down, we can see something that the technologist cannot do. They currently cannot create a teaching file. Scroll down a little farther, you can see a couple more things they can't do. So you can go in and modify this. I will caution you, if you do modify that, please test it before you go into production with it. So just run a quick test, have whatever role you're changing permissions to run through their workflow and make sure everything behaves okay. And then the add button here, we can quickly add any one of our users to the technologist role or whatever role we're currently looking at, and we can remove. So if I were to remove this person, they would go inactive in the users column since they're only a technologist. All right, that is the roles tab. Quickly moving on, we are going to the patients tab. Up here in the top, obviously our filters area, so we can narrow it down by patient group. We can search by patient ID. We can search by last name and first name. We can search in a time frame. And another option here is we can search by, or we can find invalid items. And I'm going to quickly show you how to use that. So you just check the box. I like to make sure everything, all of the other filters are open wide up so we catch everything. So I'm going to click search. And this shows us the patients that are invalid. And I think we can, seasoned veterans know why this one is invalid. We have that fancy plus at the end of the patient ID, which we all really like to fix. And then it's missing the name. It's missing the last name, first name. It's missing the gender, and it's missing the birth date. So that's why this one would be considered invalid. So as an administrator, I would make it a point. I do whatever you want daily or weekly, but just come in here and check on the invalid items and see what needs to be fixed. So in the results area, we obviously have our patient group, we have our patient ID, we have our last name, first name, gender, and birth date, everything we saw in that box. I can double click on any one of these patients, or the same thing, I click the edit button, same as double clicking, and we go in here and we see all of the information. The add button, if there was a need to create a patient from scratch, we could do that. Just fill out all of the information that we've just talked about, and remove. So when you remove a patient, it's going to get rid of the studies because there's no longer a patient that can be tied to those studies. Now, the next tab we're going to talk about in the studies tab, there is a restore. So we could find everything that has been removed recently within the last month or two. We can undo. So moving on to the studies tab. This is the one of the most used tabs in the admin console. Up here, up above, we have the same type of search filters. We have the patient group, we have the patient ID, a session number used heavily, the name, last name, first name, the modality type, the date, and I really like this feature in the date. We can search by a custom date range. So if we want to see how many MRs were done between this date and time and this date and time, we can do that. You can search by status if you want to see everything that's currently checked out or everything that is locked for edit. You can do that as well. And teaching files, you can find all of the teaching files that have been created in whatever date range you're looking for. And then you can search by priority. You can look for, stats or low priority. And we also have an invalid items only here. Now, the invalid items only in the studies tab, it's going to say it's invalid if we don't have a radiologist assigned, a referring physician assigned, and I think that's it. So and the current user. All three of those, unfortunately, have to be filled out in order for it to be considered a valid. So I personally don't use this one a whole lot because, as you can see, this one's going to pull back. Well, it pulled back everything that we were already currently looking at, MRs in the wide open time frame. All right, so in the studies tab, we open up a study. Well, it's checked out. I can't do anything. I cannot edit that one. All right, so we probably recognize this box right here. This is the patient box. If you notice it's grayed out. If we need to edit anything in the patient box, instead of going back to the patients tab, we can just click the edit button and take care of that here. If we did an exam on the wrong patient, it's not the right person at all, we can click change. And this gives us an opportunity to search for the correct patient by either patient ID or last name. Here's our result. So I'm going to say, this is the patient it should be. And I'm going to say, okay. You can from here also add a new patient. If you don't come back with a result here, you can add a new patient right there. And then we'll say, okay. And it will change that. Radiologist, this is where we determine who the radiologist is for the study. Referring physician, we briefly covered that in the users tab area. If the referring physician is incorrect, you can change it. Here's all of the referring physicians that we currently have. If we do not see the referring physician in this list, we can say create new. Are we creating a whole new user? If we say yes, it's going to pull up the user editor, or we can create an alias from here for an existing user. I kind of like that. And then assigned to. This is where we have the ability to assign it to any user. So I have seen places assigned this to technologists who need to scan paperwork in. So as an administrator or a leader of the department, I could assign to a technologist to make sure they quality check their study and they have all necessary paperwork scanned in. And it looks like we have a question. Let's see here, Q&A. Is this meeting being recorded? I couldn't join initially. Yes, it is being recorded. So Erica will make sure that this recording gets sent out to all attendees. That's a good question. Thanks, Catherine. All right, back to the study editor. The study UID, you cannot change that. The study ID you can change, the accession number you can change, and the study description you can change, and also the procedure code. You can change the study date if it comes across from the modality inaccurate. You can change the priority here. You can change the status here, and you can change the facility. You can also turn this into a teaching file. Down below here is our different series within the study, and we can actually dig down inside the series. So obviously there's going to be multiple images down inside the series. So I double click on it, and we can see each individual image. Now, the reason this is important is back when I was a PACS administrator at a hospital, I would frequently have an ultrasound tech come to me and say, hey, can you please delete image 35 from this series? I guess it shouldn't have been in there. And what we would do is we would find the series, we would double click to go inside the series, we would find the image that she was talking about. We'll just say it's this one, and then we can remove it. Now, we can also move an image to a different series within the study just by clicking the move. And this is where we would just select what series we would like it to go to, and then we would say, okay. We can also add a new series. We just give it a series ID and a description. We can edit is the same thing as double clicking. Remove, we can remove an entire series. And we can move a series to a different study. So let's say that all but one of these series belongs to this patient. This last series belongs to a different patient. So I can either create a new study for this series. If not, I can search. So I'm searching for the study that I want to move this series to. So I would just say, I need to move it to this guy, and I would say, okay. And it would pull that series that I had highlighted out and put it in the proper study. All right, I believe that's it for my turn, and I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan.
Good morning or afternoon, as the case may be. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Just waiting for my screen to come up. All right, so I'm going to start talking about the destinations tab. And just so you guys know, the version that we're currently demoing on is 8.9. We changed our route rules, things like that in 8.8. So if things don't look familiar, you may not be on that version yet. You can always check which version you're on. Just come up here to help. And then about, and it'll tell you which version you're currently on. And if you're looking in for an upgrade, just go ahead and call into support and let us know, and we'll get a case created and get you taken care of. So starting with the destination tab, essentially this is anywhere you want to send images, and it's going to mainly be just sending DICOM from one system to another. We do have multiple options. We have some new options that I'd like to explain as well. So pretty basic as far as just give a name of whatever makes sense to you, whether it's the destination or, you know, a hospital system, things like that. High-speed network transfer, it says here, it specifically for PACS, this is kind of our proprietary syntax. So when you're sending NOVRAD to NOVRAD, it's faster. But if you're sending to a non-NOVRAD system, it doesn't do any good. DICOM standard is probably what most people are going to use, and that's just I'm sending DICOM from point A to point B. And we're just going to fill in the blanks, address, port, AE title. The thing that you may need to look at, and again, this has been simplified in later versions. Before we had quite a long list of syntaxes that you could use. Now we just use 3. If you want to completely uncompressed, you have implicit and explicit. If you're looking for any sort of compression, then negotiated is the way that you want to go. And the way that this works is we actually have a list that we send people when we do that negotiation saying, hey, for that CT that that we're trying to send you, these are our options for the different syntaxes that we offer. And if the other side accepts, we'll find the best option and try and negotiate on it. If we can't negotiate on anything, we'll go back to uncompressed. So, but this is a nice tiered system to try and get the best bang for your buck, so to speak, when it comes to bandwidth. Client requested, that's still in the product, but we don't really ever use it. It's an older technology. Queue routing is actually one that a lot of people might benefit from, but they may not fully understand how it works. So what queue routing does is it essentially sets up a route queue in the system for a distant end system that it can't talk to yet, or it may not always be online. And you can even do this with the click once viewer. It does not have to be a managed viewer. So if you have a doctor that wants to read, normally we'll come up here to the DICOM transfer if it's a managed viewer, and we'll just kind of send everything as it's going throughout the day. But say that computer is not turned on all the time, or that user has to connect via a VPN, so there's not 24/7 access to that system. That's where this queue routing is really going to come into play. If the system's in a hospital, it's always on, it's always available. Standard DICOM is fantastic, or high speed. But this queue, you just put in the client system name. Another benefit, if I don't know if you guys run into this a lot, I see it occasionally, is if you don't have static IP addresses, your system, we don't require an IP address for this. We just require a system name. Whatever your standard Windows name is for this, you just put that in here. And this just creates a queue of everything that needs to be routed to that system. As soon as the viewer is opened up, that viewer will then reach out to the PACS server and say, hey, this is my client name. Do you have anything for me? And if so, I will download it all right now. So it's very, very good for on demand. So once you have your route rules in, we'll go ahead and go to the rule editor. And then these are your route rules. Used to be called route rules, now it's rule editor, same tab. The nice thing is this is also dramatically changed. Like to think it's been improved. You can use your schedule here, So if you say, in this case, it's an on-call destination, we don't want it routing during business hours, we can go ahead and block that out and enable it. If you need to, if you want to, you can invert it. Say you copy a different schedule. So from here, I want to copy another existing rule and I want to just do the opposite, then I can just click on invert. It's nice. Priority, it's going to default to 3. We usually recommend it stays there. We sometimes run into issues in support where people like to make it a higher priority. But if you make it a priority 2 or a priority 1 here, it's one of those situations where if everything is urgent, nothing is urgent, and it will just queue with everything else. So if you leave it at a 3, everything in there is 3, something urgent comes up, then you can override that and make it a 1, and then it'll go faster. And then you're pretty much the only actions you're going to use this time are going to be route. And then the destination is whatever you want to call it. You know, it's going to be whatever destinations you created previously. The nice thing that we've added here is the conditions are better. So if you want to add conditions, you can do, you know, there's quite a list here. Not all of them are going to apply to everybody, so you'll just need to make sure what applies to your facility. Modality is always a good one. Institution tag is always a good one. Facility is a good one. And then you can specify, I want to route nothing but CTs in this case, or you can add any modality you want. The nice thing about this as well is if you hit this check mark and make it an X, now it's going to say send everything but this. So if you want everything going to this destination, this doctor's workstation, except for memos or except for, in this case, CTs, you can do that. Same with the facilities. You can say I want everything from this facility sent here, or I want everything except this facility to be going here. So that's a nicer option that we have available now. Once you get into routing, again, the route queue is going to change. So let me go ahead and just route a quick study. We'll just do this one real fast. And once it gets in here into the route queue, now you're going to be able to see everything that's going over, and you can keep an eye on it in real time. What's nice, especially with the newer router, is this % complete, because it'll tick off as it goes. If you've got 500 images, you can watch them tick off. So instead of just seeing it in the route queue and hoping that everything is making there, you can watch it in real time. It'll tell you when it's done, how long it took, and it'll stay in the route queue for a while, and then it'll come over into route history as soon as it's all done and it's cleared. Route events are usually where you're going to look at when you're looking for any problems. If something didn't route because of bad DICOM, couldn't find an image, destination was unreachable, anything like that, you're going to be able to come into here at route events and see. So hopefully I didn't go through that too quickly, but it's the new system is very nice. DICOM options. This is where you're going to come in and set up if somebody wants to query or retrieve. If you have another system that is going to query our system for one reason or another, we won't allow it unless they are specifically put in here. So if you have like a reading station from another company that reaches back to Novrad and says, hey, I've got this is, you know, this accession number, this patient, what have you, I want to retrieve those studies. So you'll just come in here, go ahead and name it. This name is just whatever makes sense to you. The AE title, this is the AE title of the requesting system. So that when it reaches us, it's going to say, hey, I am this AE title from this IP address, and I'm requesting from this port. And if those match, we'll go ahead and say, okay, you are authorized to query retrieve our system. Here is your information. And that takes us into the event log. All right, just checking the questions real fast. Okay. So hopefully most people are familiar with the event log and what goes on. Sometimes there will be a degree in which you're going to want to filter out the noise. But you know, these filters are fantastic. We use them a lot in support, just to make sure that you're not seeing too much, especially for things that don't matter. If you're getting a brand new server and your old server's out of space, it's kind of going to spam the event log, and it's going to look concerning, but it's not going to be concerning. So if you keep an eye on the machine so that you can make sure that you are looking at the correct system or looking at systems that matter to you. So here's your filters. We can do message, we can do context, machine, or user. So, and then you can see kind of what everybody's doing. And then it'll just kind of tell you down here and you can filter. So message is just going to be everything in this message field. If you type it in, as long as you use, if you want to make it easy, you can use a star and then just something simple like data set stored, which we can already see right here. That's going to filter it down to that. Context is probably what you're going to be using a little bit more, just because it has a lot more information in it about everything that's going on. The nice thing about context that not everybody knows is, again, a lot of people will use the star. I've seen it. I've used it. It's fantastic. If you use a %, then it will allow you to use multiple conditions when you are trying to search. So this one right here, we're looking at this one. There is the patient ID, and then we also want the accession number. Sorry, I'm going to have to copy and paste it. So hopefully it all makes sense when I'm done. So each two of those conditions, they are not lined up in the context, but they are both in the context. And by having the the percent signs on each side surrounded by a space, now I can further trim this down. So if you're looking for something very specific, we're doing a whole lot of stuff for patient X, but I just want to see a session number X or anything like that, where you're just trying to further trim down that information so that you are only seeing what you're wanting to see. And then in this case, I saw exactly what I was searching for, which is fantastic. And then the machine is just if you're looking for a specific machine. I had seen one earlier, but you can look if somebody says, hey, I'm having a problem on NR Enterprise 05, then you can put in NR Enterprise 05 on here, change the date to whatever you're looking for, however many rows we have available to search, and then you can see everything going on in that system. Or if you just have one user that's struggling, you can do the similar with the user. So, and then over here, we can also further filter if we're looking for specific functions. Over here in the filtered options. So if I'm just looking for everything that is going through the router, or if I'm looking for anything that is going through the image processor, I can go ahead and click on that, and then it's going to filter that down and tell me what's going on with that service. You can still use these filters over here to further filter and cut down this list. So right now it's a test server. There's not a whole lot of stuff going on here. If you're a busy site doing 50, 60, 70,000 images a day, the event log is going to get very, very busy. And the more you can filter through that noise, the better off you're going to be, and it's going to save you a whole lot of headaches. The audit log is very similar. It gives kind of the same filters and information, and you have the same filter options over here. The difference is this is going to be a lot more about changes to patients and things like that when things were ordered. It's going to give a lot less about how everything's functioning and what was done. The event log is kept indefinitely. So if you're looking for something that was changed 5 years ago, or you have a 5-year-old study and you're trying to find out why a name was changed, why a session number was updated, anything like that, it is going to be in the system. So, and one thing that I put here, it's the same. If you guys are using the parentheses on each of your conditions, then you're going to be able to further filter it down. You're going to be able to add multiple conditions in there and capture what you're looking for. So we kind of went through the filters already on the other system. The nice thing about the audit log and the event log are when you have the information that you want, you have it filtered down, and say there's a lot of information here. In this case, there's 248 rows. You can come up to console and you can come up to and export the data. And it'll give you, it'll let you dump this onto your desktop or wherever you want to put that data. And then if you open it in, say, Microsoft Excel, if you guys prefer that program, or any spreadsheeting program, it'll let you filter out those tab delimited columns. And then you can look at this and then you can manipulate it in Excel. Depending on what you guys are trying to accomplish with the data. The nice thing about this is usually if I'm trying to research, or if a site asks me, hey, I need to know everything that this user did on a day, or everything that was done with this study, where I may have to do multiple searches, I can dump that also into that spreadsheet, filter it by time, and then I can see everything. Or if they're saying, hey, I want to see everything that Nate Lowe did, but also what Jonathan Deal did, then I could, get those two data sets, combine them, and then have a nice presentable spreadsheet, or however you're trying to display that information. So another field, or another tab that we have, is server status. Server status is going to give you some good information on everything that's going on at your server at the time. Just as far as your available space, your free space. Novarad does get alerts when you run into any sort of concerning space situation, but that doesn't mean that we would ever discourage you guys being on top of it. If you guys are looking at it, if you have a concern, or especially if you guys are adding modalities, or say you're going from 2D to 3D mammal and you just have a concern about space, let us know, and we'll make sure that everything is good as far as that goes. This will also show you what services are running. This may or may not be too informational for you. There's a couple of services like the LTA catalog and the PACS archive that are in most cases going to be stopped, and that should not be a concern. Let's see. So next is just general information about support cases. So we have this conversation a lot with customers, and what we want you guys to do, if there is a problem that you can easily fix, that's fantastic. That's great. You can fix it. If you can't, please let us know and give us a call, submit a ticket, things like that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm just mainly discussing the kind of things you're going to want to let us know. If you guys are having performance issues, please let us know. And one of the key things that we really, really want to know, and that we don't always, the tech on the phone may not always fully understand, is if this is a continual problem, if this is something that you have talked to different techs about in the past, please let us know. If it is a systemic issue and not a one-off issue, we need to know so that we can treat it as such. A lot of times, a lot of these situations are, kind of presented in a way where it seems like a one-off issue, and so it's treated as a one-off issue, and then people come back upset later saying, hey man, this is happening all the time, why? And we didn't dig into it with that mindset because we didn't know at the time. So please let us know. There's a few different methods. Nate's going to talk about the customer portal. You can go and get information there. You can create a ticket there. That is fantastic. Shooting an email is always a great one. support@novarad.net if you guys need help. Just give us some information. Try and be specific. Again, be careful with PHI, but try and give us as much information as possible. You know, if you say system is slow, that is very generic and it's hard for us to kind of look into prior to reaching back out to you. A lot of times, if it's something we can fix quickly, we'll fix it quickly, reach back out to you and say, hey, look, we got your email, we created a case, we resolved your issue, and this is what we did to resolve it. But if we're not given the information, then there's very little we can act upon. Other than that, you can just call us. If you pick up the phone, give us a call. We'll get somebody on the phone and taking care of your issue right away. If it is urgent, or if it is majorly impacting your workflow, you guys are down, anything like that, please give us a call. We've had instances where things are just busy and somebody shoots an email saying my PACS is down, and then they're upset when they don't get an immediate call back. If you are severely impacted, please give us a call, get somebody on the phone and looking at it right now. Sorry, I was just looking at a question. So to answer your question, Rachel, sorry, I just noticed that about the DICOM options. Yeah, the name in DICOM options is whatever is logical to you. If it's a reading group, whatever is gonna, when somebody looks at it, they're gonna know what that destination is. That name field is whatever you want it to be. The AE title, the port, and the IP address have to be very specific, but the name can be whatever makes sense to you guys. Then I saw somebody just send a message about the customer portal. I will allow that. I will allow Nate to answer that question since that's part of his training. So let's see. And I covered everything that I was going to cover. So if you have any questions for me, please let me know, and I'll answer them via typing while Nate continues to show us what's next.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, customer portal. Why do we want to show you the customer portal during the advanced PACS admin training? Because it's a super powerful tool for any PACS admin, any department leader. I'm going to, let's see, there's a little bit of information that I should give you right off the bat. If you're not familiar with the Novarad customer portal and you would like to use it, it's free for all of our customers. Send us an email at portalrequest@novarad.net. And then just include some basic information like your name, the facility you work at, what your title is, and your phone number, and we'll get you access, no problem. To get to the portal, you're going to go to customer.novarad.net. By the way, you'll obviously receive an email when we get you all registered for the portal, and then it will guide you through setting up a password, and then you have access. So as an admin, we have a very important job of managing our team's access within the portal. So I don't know if you saw where I clicked in the upper right hand corner, team access. Here is a list of all of our users. There's some important information at a glance. We have our name. The email address will be the username. We have what type of access they have and whether they are an active user or not. So I am going to go through setting someone up from scratch. Click new user. We have our first name and our last name, organization name. As you can see, the little red bars here, that indicates that it's a required field. So you don't have to put the organization name. But if you have different facilities, maybe it would be helpful to you to say, you know, west facility, east facility, email address. Mobile phone, not necessary, but you can put it in there. It can be helpful to have a phone number for support reasons. If someone on your team wants to open up a support case, we can contact them back at that phone number. And then we have address, you know, zip code. For some reason, and it's probably helpful for our support department so that we know where the case came from, because we have different support teams dedicated to different regions. So the state is required. And then the next thing, very important thing we need to talk about, is the type of access. So the admin or the super user would be considered in here the primary customer. Now, the primary customer can do everything in the portal, including this team access section, managing the team. The customer can do everything but manage the team access. So they can open up support cases, they can do everything else but team access. And then content user can look at knowledge-based articles, newsletters, that sort of stuff, training material, but they cannot open up a support case through the portal, and obviously they cannot have team access. All right, going back to the previous page, make sure I covered everything. This little action button here on the left of each user, we can change access. So if we don't want them to be a primary customer over anymore, we can change the access, say set them to customer. We can reset their password from here. So you frequently have people say, I don't remember my password. It's super easy. They can even do it themselves. On the login screen, there is a link that says, I forgot my password. So if they don't catch that link and they come to you, here's how you reset their password. You can also disable the user. So it's the same sort of concept as the user tab in the admin console. All you do is disable them. They get grayed out. There will be a no here. Eventually, you'll have, you know, with turnover, you'll have a few no's here in this column. You can filter that out. All you do here is say, I only want to see active users. So that would filter out all of the no's. You can also filter by access level. If I want to see who are all of my content users, I don't have any. That's how we would see that. And of course, if you have any questions on this, you can reach out to us. You can get to the home page by either clicking home or the Novarad logo. So the first thing I want to talk about, aside from the team access, is creating a case. I'll click on that. What kind of a question or a problem or a request do you have? Go ahead and just type it in. I have a problem with my work list. So as I type, it's pulling knowledge base article titles back so that in hopes that I can see something that might answer my question. So I'm just going to click search here. Nothing in that list is helping me. I'm going to scan this list of knowledge base articles. This one might help me, so I'm going to click on this. So here's a lot of good information that I could scan through to see if that helps me. You can rate the knowledge base articles so that we can realize, yes, the information we included helped me or not. Also, if this knowledge base article helped me with my problem, you would help us here at Novarad out a ton by saying this article solved my issue. Right? That lets us know that this knowledge base article is doing good and we can create more just like it. The same sort of format. Gosh, I've taken too long there. Anyways, if this article did not solve my problem, if I come back here, create a case, I'm going back. to where I was, work list. I'm searching. I can't find anything this time that solved my problem. So I click create a new support ticket. Here's where we decide, is it a question? Do I actually have a problem? Do I have some kind of a request, or do I just need training on something? I'm just going to say there's a problem. Symptom. Well, I did mention modality work list. If you can't find your issue here in this list, just say other and include what you're running into in the description below. I'm just going to say modality work list here. Short description. Work list is down. Additional notes. This is where we want to get super granular to help our support team hit the ground running. So I want to say stuff like work list is down for CT and MR. That will help us know that, oh, it's not across the board. When did it start happening? Started this morning at 10 a.m. That sort of stuff. You get the hint. I'm going to click submit. A couple things are going to happen. Our support team is going to receive an email saying Nate just submitted a ticket. They'll start working on it. They'll assign it and start working on it. You will also receive an email saying, thank you. We have received your support ticket. Conrad is now working on your case. So I'm going back to the home screen. That's how we open up a case. I can go now to my cases and I can see all of my open cases. Now, this is where it starts to get awesome for us as administrators, is we can see every case that has been opened, including cases that you did not open. Anyone on your team opens, you can see it as a primary customer or an admin. So if I want to get a little more information, I can click on this blue link, the case number. I can come in here, I can see who is working on it. It will actually have a real person's name there, I promise. There's your case title, there's when the case was created, there's your description, next action, so you know what support has planned. That's your site code, the origin, meaning that it was open in the portal, and that brings up something very important. Origin can be, you can see cases here in the portal, even if they were opened by a phone call or an email. So that's what that origin would be for. It would let you know how this case was opened. Current status, it's active. It would let you know if it has been escalated, if the support engineer needed some additional eyes on it, and it would let you know with a little checkbox here that it has been escalated. If by some reason you figured the problem out after you opened up the case and you no longer need the case open, you can cancel it right here. One of my favorite features here is the notes section. This is awesome because we can update our case notes so that the support engineer here at Novarad can see. So just type in a title, whatever you want. This happened again at 12 p.m. Another neat thing here is you can upload a file. So let's say you have a screenshot. Let's say you're having a problem with the study, you can upload DICOM files. Super helpful for the support engineer and yourself. So I have some notes here. I'm clicking submit. The support engineer who owns your case will get an email saying, hey, here's an update. Go ahead and look at it. And you can see notes from your support engineer, and you'll get an email when they submit a case note. All right, going back to my cases. We talked about all of the open cases. We can now see all of our closed cases. And the reason this is helpful is, let's say a few months ago, we had a recurring problem and it was fixed. It hasn't happened and it starts happening again. Well, we can now go through and find the issue in our closed cases. Waiting for it to open up. All right. The first thing I would look at is under the resolution, see what was done. Obviously, this is just a test case here, but we will have a detailed resolution on what was done. And there should be a link to a knowledge base article that could help you resolve the issue if you could do it yourself. If the case does need to be reopened, we have a reopen case button. And the reason that can be helpful for you is you don't have to take the time to retype a case title and a description, all of that stuff. All of that will already be there when you click open case. So I hope that helps out. All right, moving on, our knowledge base section. You can search here for, it's not only how do I fix problems, it's how do I do something. So if I want to learn how to burn CDs, I would search for, you know, just some keywords. There we go, right there. Here is how I burn a patient CD DVD, right there. Another way to use this knowledge base is if I find my knowledge lacking in a certain area. Let's say I want to learn more about CryptoChart. Well, we have categories here. I can click on CryptoChart and just go through these knowledge base articles and up my game a little bit. We also have, here's all of our tags. So you can see our tags here and scan the tags, see if there's anything you want to learn about. Like NovaScan, we have 7 articles with the tag of NovaScan. So if you're not quite sure what to search for, just look through this here. There's also a subscribe button here. I don't know if I would recommend subscribing to this because we are constantly adding new knowledge base articles, and I would hate for you to be spammed every time we create a new knowledge base article. Where I would recommend you subscribe is here in our newsletter section. So here's our fancy subscribe button here. Anytime we upload a new newsletter, you'll get notified through email. I'm just going to open up one of our newsletters here. So you can get an idea of what you're going to see. All right, moving on. Training. We don't have anything in training right now, but we do have big plans for this section. We are working with ASRT and ARRT to get free credits, CE credits, just like you're going to get for attending this class. We're going to have online training associated with those credits. So you can see, you'll be able to look forward to that coming up in the future. Upcoming events, that would be for, you know, user group, any sort of training that we have upcoming or local events sort of thing. Product information, just what it sounds like. It's a bunch of brochures of the products that Novarad offers. So if you were interested in, say, Novadose, you can open it up and see what it's all about. Back to the home screen. User manuals. I feel like this is another underutilized area because if you open up a user manual is going to describe in extreme detail how to use the product. I'm just going to open up the PACS user manual, and I apologize if you already know this, but you can hit Control F if you're going to search for a specific keyword. And I'm just going to type in image, which is probably going to come back with a ton of results. But anytime image is brought up in the user manual, it's going to highlight it. See, I have over 1,400. So I can click the down arrow and just scroll through every time it says whatever I searched for. So instead of reading through right around 400 and something pages, we can just use the search feature. And I feel like that's very helpful. Release notes, another really good piece of information here. If support is asking you to go from version 8.8.5 to version 8.9.3, well, you can come in here and find the release notes. That's 8.10. Okay, so let's say they want you to go to 8.10. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to tell me what has changed so I can prepare my team for any sort of a new feature that has been released. So I hope you all find that helpful. The last thing is, this is just the most recent cases that have been worked on or opened or resolved, and these are the most recent knowledge base articles. So if you just want to log in and see what's new, just scroll down to the bottom and you'll see that. And that is pretty much it. The only other item that I wanted to mention is, if you are not currently using the Novarad customer portal and you want to, obviously send us an email to portalrequest@novarad.net and include that basic information that we talked about. And also, I have seen the reply email from us getting you registered go into spam or being blocked altogether by our IT departments. So if you want to write this down, if you're after this class, if you're going to sign up for the Novarad customer portal, write this email address down: noreply.portal@novarad.net, and give that to your IT department if they tend to block email addresses, and say, hey, can you please make sure that this is allowed through? Because that address, noreply.portal@novarad.net, is where you will get the communication saying, we got your support case, here's an update to your support case, in addition to your registration email. So I just wanted to point that out. And that is all I have for the customer portal. I believe Conrad is going to take it from here.
Good morning, everybody. Let me just set up my screen sharing. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to be going over our reports tab in the admin console. The reports tab has 3 different reports available for you: our critical findings report, our peer review report, and our study utilization report. And we'll go over each of these and what they entail. So our critical findings report only gives you one filter option, and that filter option is for the date. It defaults to all. Actually, I'm sorry, I believe it defaults to last 24 hours, but you have 24 hours, last 7 days, last 30 days, last 12 months, all, and then you can always put in a custom range and pick whichever date range you're looking for. You do also have to set the time frame as well, so just remember that when you're picking your date range. But once you hit search, it returns any results for critical findings that were marked as critical findings in the Novarad viewer. Generally, it's your radiologist or an assigned personnel who are going in and utilizing our critical finding function inside the viewer. And they're given the option to enter a few different parts of information. They get to add what the finding is for that critical finding, and then they can also document what contact information or who they contacted for that critical finding, and informed about that critical finding. So from this base screen right here, the columns that you'll see is the patient column, which contains the last name and first name, and then the patient's medical record number. The study column, and the study column isn't going to show you the study description. It's going to only give you the accession number and then the date that the study was performed on. And then you'll see the modality that particular study had associated with it. The findings, if any findings were actually documented when the person who flagged that study as having a critical value or a critical finding entered any information, what user entered that critical finding, and then the date and time that they entered that. And then it's also going to let you know whether a recorded documentation was entered for an attempt to contact the referring physician or anybody regarding that finding, and then whether they were able to confirm that contact. And then if you double click on that, you get the finding notification details box that pops up. It contains all of that same information. It also gives you the patient group for that particular exam. And then it tells you what who the recipient of that notification was, the type of notification, what if they had like a phone number that was input, what the phone number was that they used to try to contact that person, and then the date and time those contacts were or notifications were documented, and then it lets you kind of know whether it was confirmed or not. There is an option to document text message notification or in-person contacts as well. And then you can go in and add additional comments if needed at that point. This is a great tool for running reports as far as tracking total number of critical values for your site and running reports like that. Our next report on here is going to be our peer review report. This one has a few more filters available to you. You have the date filter, which defaults to last 24 hours. But you have the same options as far as 7 days, 30 days, 12 months, all and that custom range again. You can also filter by facilities. So if you have multiple facilities set up under your instance of Novarad, you could filter by a specific facility so that you weren't having to look at everything for all the facilities. You can search for a specific accession number if you're looking for a peer review on a specific exam, the reviewer's last name or first name, a particular modality, the reviewed last name or first name, and then the position. So the position is going to be whether or not the person who did the peer review concurs with the initial interpretation, whether the diagnosis should this diagnosis should have been made most of the time, whether it's not an ordinary or expected diagnosis, or the discrepancy should be made most of the time. So those are the different options that they're going to have to choose from when they're documenting that. And then you can also sort by whether it was likely or unlikely to affect the patient's care, and filter that way as well. And then you have your miss rate factor. You can set that to weekly, monthly, or yearly, depending on what you're looking for. But when you hit search, it'll return everything that's been documented in our peer review application. Our peer review application or tool is also utilized in the diagnostic viewer as well. And it gives the doctors a bunch of different options when they're going through that. But the report is going to generate your modality for each exam that was peer reviewed. It's going to tell you who reviewed it or who the reviewer was, who marked that study as reviewed, so who did that initial reading on that exam, the different position that was selected by whichever radiologist was doing the peer review, and then your likelihood of being clinically significant to that particular patient will be listed there. You have any comments that were entered by the person performing the peer review, the date and time it was updated, and then your study information. Once again, the study information that it's displaying is the accession number and the date of the exam. It does not display the study description. And then it's going to list the facility that exam was performed under. You can also access the original exam report from here by highlighting one of these and clicking on the exam report. Unfortunately, since this is a demo system, I don't have any exam reports in here to show you, but it would launch a separate window with that report at that time. So you can take a look at the exam report from there, and then you can go in and review the images from here as well, just by highlighting and clicking on view images, and it'll take you directly to that study. That is good. It does launch the study in our HTML5 viewer, which isn't the full diagnostic viewer, but you would be able to view those images straight from there. And the last report on our reports tab is our study utilization report. Has some similar filters. The first one always starts off with our date filter. It defaults to last 24 hours, but you still have the same options of last 7 days, 30 days, 12 months, all, and the custom range again. We do have the facility filter again, so you can differentiate between facilities if you have multiple facilities set up. We also have an accession number filter. So if you were looking for a specific utilization report for a specific study, you could type in that accession number here. The reviewed person's last name or first name, the modality, and then the assessment options. So the assessment options that we have are intermediate, negative due to technical issues, negative due to wrong exam, positive but not insignificant findings. So when you hit search, it returns the same. Oops, sorry. Let me open up our time frame a little bit. Sorry. It returns the same type of report. You have your modality column, the reviewed person's last name and first name listed right there, the different assessments, any comments that were entered during that study utilization report, the date and time for you. Once again, it's listing the study information, and we're only listing the accession numbers and the dates, and then the facility in there. You still have the same options to view the exam report and view the images directly from here. For all 3 of the reports that we've gone over, you can export a copy of the report so that if you needed to drop it into an Excel file for adding to a presentation later on, you can. And you do that simply by going up to Console and Export Data. And that's going to allow you to export that report and save that report to your local machine. And then you could use that information in whatever other reports that you're generating. And it's going to be just this raw data information in here. It's not going to export any of the images or the reports, the exam reports in there. Let's see. So we are now going to move over to our facilities tab, and we're going to be going over facilities, medical groups, and patient groups. All 3 of these areas kind of tie into each other a little bit. So we'll start off with our facilities tab. You can have multiple facilities per your Novarad instance. There will be a default facility for your Novarad instance. And when you're looking at your list of facilities, it's going to list whatever name you've decided to come up with for your facility, a facility description, whether or not it's the default facility, and then it'll list the city and phone number if that information was put in when the facility was initially created, and then whether or not we do the backup offsite or not. If you wanted to edit any information or any of the demographics for any of your facilities, all you would need to do is double click on that facility, and you'll get a list of all of the different information that you can put in. The only required information is the facility name and then a description of the facility. There also is a checkbox here to create procedures in RIS for new studies that come in. This checkbox is generally only enabled if you are sending images over and not receiving orders from your EMR or another ordering system, or if you're not generating orders in our RIS. This is the checkbox that you would create or check in order to create those orders in the RIS the moment we receive images. Once you're in the General tab for the facility editor, you'll notice in the right-hand corner, it gives you an option to select patient groups for that facility. There's a drop-down list of all of the different patient groups that are available, and you can select which patient group you want to be tied to that particular facility. And then you'll see a list of aliases. The aliases are any other institution names that we receive as part of the DICOM information that's embedded in the images that are sent to our system. So for your default facility, if you imported a CD from another facility, you would see that facility's name listed in here under the aliases, just so that there's a facility that we can tie those images to. But you could move these around or add additional facilities or remove them simply by highlighting them and then clicking either remove, edit, or add. If you click on edit, it's just going to allow you to edit the name. If you click on add, it'll allow you to add a new facility name, or you can move a facility, a alias to a different facility. And this is a way of partitioning out access so that if images come in under a specific institution name, you can label them under a specific facility so that whichever patient groups have access to that facility can only see those images, and they won't be able to see images for other facilities, other patient or other patient groups. And then that kind of directly leads us into our medical groups and patient groups tab. So we're going to jump to the patient groups first. And in here, you'll see a list of all of the different patient groups we have set up for this demo system. You have the add, edit, and set default options off to the right-hand side. You also have the remove option that you can only do for certain patient groups that don't have anything in them. But you'll notice that on this list right here, you have the default column that'll show you which patient group is listed as your default patient group. And if you double click on any of those patient groups, you get the option to edit the patient group name, the patient group description, and then down here, you get the option to add any medical groups to that patient group. And when you add an entire medical group to that patient group, it's going to give all the users that are listed under that medical group access to any studies that are tied to that facility or that patient group. And you simply do that by adding and then selecting from your list of medical groups right here. You can also remove them just by highlighting and clicking remove. That kind of leads us right into our medical groups tab. And in our medical groups tab, you'll see the list of the different medical groups. You have the same add, edit, and remove buttons. If you double click on any of your medical groups, it'll give you that medical group name. It'll give you a list of all of the different members. So you would be able to see all of the different users who were assigned to or had access to that particular medical group. You can add and remove users from here just by clicking add user, and you'll get a list of all of the different users that you have created for your system. And you can simply highlight and click OK, and it would add that user there. If you wanted to remove them, you would highlight them again and remove them, and they would disappear. I'm going to give Matt his access back. That way he doesn't get mad later on when he can't access the demo system. The next section you have is the different patient groups that you can add to that medical group. So that list that we were kind of looking at before, you can click add group right here and select your patient group from here and add multiple patient groups to a particular medical group. And everybody listed in that patient group would then have access to all of the images under this medical group. And then you can simply remove them just by highlighting and clicking remove. And then that one would disappear. You also have the facilities that you can add and remove from here simply by clicking add facility and then selecting that facility from the different facilities that we saw listed earlier and putting them right in there. And then you can remove them the same way. That is everything I have for those tabs. We are actually going to take a small break and review some of the questions that have come up through our chat, just to make sure that we're answering any of the questions, or if you guys do have additional questions, we can kind of address some of those live now. I know we've been trying to answer some of them in the chat. Let's take a quick look at some of those. And Nate and Jonathan, if there was any questions that you wanted to go over or answer live, let me know if you guys want to jump in. So if there are no other questions coming in, I guess I will just jump directly into the viewer. Give me just a second to get that pulled up for us. Okay, so you guys all should be pretty familiar with our diagnostic viewer, but I'm going to go over some of the customization features that we have and just kind of go through some of our basics. We do have a complete class on viewer customization that you guys can attend and we'll be going through, but we're just going to kind of go over some high level stuff really quick. So this is our basic default setup for our diagnostic viewer and the study browser. One of the greatest things about our study browser and our viewer in general is it's extremely customizable. You can move things around to mimic previous workflows or edit things so that it fits best for you and the way you're working, and each of your users can do that as well. All of their preferences are saved specifically to them, so making a change on their profile isn't going to affect anybody else. They can add different buttons or remove buttons or add different columns, and none of that's going to change for any of the other users. It'll just change for their profile. So one of the first things I like to show everybody, and it hasn't been around forever, is their ability to customize the color palette for their viewer. So there's a little gear in the study browser that you guys can click on, and we have a few different color themes that you can pick from. And so they change the background layout for everybody. Some of the radiologists find it a little bit easier to view the darker color palettes so that it's not as bright of a screen while they're reading their images. Some of them like the extra light from the screen, so they can select, our lighter color palettes on there. And then, if, you have different staff who just prefer different colors, some of them want, the light blue or the pink theme. It's just totally dependent on user preference. But like I said, only affects their profile, doesn't affect anybody else's. The other options in here are your font size and your viewer scale. So your font size is going to affect the font size in your study browser. And by increasing that, you can kind of see those font sizes increasing and decreasing for you. So if you have a smaller screen or the resolution's a little small and it's kind of hard to read sometimes, I always suggest changing the font size first to see if that improves what you're looking at. The other option here is the viewer scale, and the viewer scale normally defaults to 100%. But once again, if that's kind of hard to see, or with the newer monitors, sometimes it makes it a little difficult to read some of the buttons in our viewer. You can adjust that font size to make those buttons pop out a little bit bigger, and the labeling come out a little bit bigger. I'll change it back to 100 so you guys kind of see what it looks like in its original state. So that's where 100% is, and you can make those adjustments back and forth without having to do a whole lot of work. The other area I like to show everybody is our customizable buttons on this top ribbon right up here. This is generally the default that most of the facilities see when they log in, but these can be modified to whatever works best for your workflow just by right-clicking and hitting Customize. When you right-click in there, on the left-hand side is going to be a list of all of the different buttons and tools that you can add to that toolbar. On the right-hand side is going to be what you're currently displaying. So you can add and remove buttons depending on what you use the most. One of the ones that normally comes up as a default is the patient CD/DVD burning option. Some of the sites have transitioned over to our crypto chart product and don't use the patient CD and DVD anymore. So if that's not a button that's really being used, you can just quickly highlight it and remove it. And then once you hit OK, you'll notice that button disappears and it kind of frees up space for additional buttons if you need. In order to add a button, you would just find whatever tool that you wanted to add, highlight that, and click Add. The other option in here is our toolbar options. And this kind of lets you play around with the layout of the buttons that you have on here. There are auto settings or viewer scale settings that you can set, or you can change the size or the direction and orientation of your buttons and the button labeling manually. So if I change it to normal and I hit OK, you'll see those buttons get a lot smaller. It does give you more room on the screen, but a little bit harder to see. So some people like to make those adjustments depending on what's easiest for them. And you can also adjust both the image size and the text size. So if you want the text to be larger, but the image to be normal, you can go that route to where it's just easier to read on there. After that, you have your general search tab, and then our advanced work list tabs. Our advanced work lists are used a lot by our radiologists to build custom work lists to display certain criteria. So when you're looking at those advanced work lists, you can create a new one just by clicking on New. You do have to name each work list so that it can save that particular work list. And then it gives you the default options and filters. The first default option you get is the data source. So you can select one data source or multiple data sources, depending on what you're looking for. And then you have your time frame option that you can set in here. And it's all of our standard time frame options, including all and our custom time frame option. And then you have your modality. So you can make this work list modality specific. You can have multiple modalities listed in here. Just by clicking the checkbox on more than one, and it would include multiple, or you can always leave it on all. Our study description filter will allow you to type in whatever study description you want this filter to filter for. So like if you just wanted a breast ultrasound work list, you would type in the study description for your breast ultrasounds, and it would only pull those particular studies. And then we always have our status option in here, and you could filter by the various statuses. Most of the time, radiologists just want to see the stuff that's already been marked as verified and is ready for them to read. But you can always check multiple in here just by clicking in the little check boxes, and it would only show the exams that match those statuses. You can also add additional filters to each of these just by right-clicking in this gray space right here, and you'd get the different drop downs to add the different filters for the report status, the procedure status, your priority. If you wanted to filter just for your stat exams, you could just select stat and leave that on there. Your procedure statuses, you could sort by multiple or just one. And then your report status, whether or not that exam currently has a report attached to it. So if you selected no, you're only going to be seeing exams that don't have a report. But there's all of our different statuses in here, including our or filters in here, including all of our custom filters that your site can have us map specifically for you. And then you can add additional levels to these advanced work lists. So let's say you wanted one set of criteria for one data source and then another set of criteria for a different data source. You could select that criteria on there depending on what your workflow is and how you're reading. And then once you're done making all of those adjustments, you would just hit save, and that would be your custom work list that would sit here as an independent tab that you can always flash back and forth to without having to go in there and set those filters every single time. And you can have multiple custom filters up here. I've seen, 14 or 15 different custom filters on there. That way you don't have to go through the process of editing these filters every single time. Our general search tab functions fairly similarly to where you can add and remove different filters depending on what you're looking for. There are some default filters that normally come up, which is what you're seeing right now. Your saved filters, data sources, timeframes, modalities, patient groups. So you can sort by all of those different patient groups that we were talking about earlier. You can type in a medical record number or patient ID number, last name, first name, study description, a session number. And then, like I said, you can still add all of your other filters on there. Then you get down to the filtered studies tab. So this is the section that's only displaying whatever we're filtering for. And if we were to change our filters, you'll see that the number of studies will change every single time. You can also customize the layout of this as well, simply by dragging and dropping whatever columns you want into whatever location you want. So if there's a column that's listed on here that you don't necessarily care about or want to see as much, and you want to place it towards the end, just drag and drop that over to wherever you want. You can add additional columns the same way that we added filters, just by right-clicking into that empty area, and you'll get that same drop-down list so that you can add and remove different columns depending on what you're looking for. You can sort your lists by any of these columns simply by clicking on the column, and it'll reorder and resort depending on what you're looking for. And then our next section is our patient history section. It does contain some of the same information as our filtered studies information, but our patient history section is a list of all of the other exams that this particular patient's had done at your facility. So it's going to show you which one you're currently clicked on, and then list all of the other exams that particular patient's had done. You can add and remove columns from this as the same way that you did on the other two, simply by right-clicking and checking or unchecking whichever columns that you want to have displayed there, and you'll see those columns pop up. You can also reorder them the same way. So if the report column is something you wanted a little bit more, move it closer to the front, and you can just kind of move those around whatever's easiest for you. Our next section is going to be our series section, images section, and report section. The series section is going to give you a list of the series within the study that you currently have selected. So it'll give you the description, the modality, the date and time of that series, and then the number of images in that series. If I select a different study, you'll see that series box will change to display the series for the study that I have selected. I can also add and remove columns from the series section the same way. I don't get quite as many options, but these are the options that you can add and remove on there. You can also reorder them as well, depending on what you're looking for or what information is most pertinent to you at the time. The other option that a lot of people like to see is our image thumbnails, and that's going to be under the Images tab. It's going to give you a quick thumbnail image of whatever series are available for that particular study. It'll show you the series description, the series number, the series description, and the number of images in that series. So you can take a look at how many images you have available for each of those. You can open those images by double clicking, but if you double click here, you're only going to open up that one series. You're not going to open up the entire study. So just remember, if you do mean to look at the entire study, you can either double click up in the filtered studies section or the patient history section. And then we have our report tab, which would display the exam report in this window here if there was an exam report available. Since this is a demo system, I don't have any exam reports in here. So we're just going to get this blank screen where we could input a exam report. And it looks like we're getting a little low on time right now. Nate, did you need time to cover the last portion for the risks?
Yeah, I can cover it in 5, maybe 10 minutes.
Okay. So let me just show you guys one more thing really quick before I turn it over to Nate. And that is the image button customization. So the viewer button customization. So all of these buttons that we have up here can be customized. You can add and remove buttons depending on what you need for your workflow. And it's the same process of right-clicking, and you get this pop-up menu where you can go to customize, and you'll see all of the different toolbars that we have. So we have our main toolbar, our right toolbar, and our left toolbar. And as we click on those, we'll see the different options that we have already listed on there. And you can add and remove different tools depending on what's easiest for your workflow right from there. I'm not going to go into too much more detail about that because I don't want to take up all of Nate's time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Nate. Give me just a second to stop screen sharing.
Thanks, Conrad.
There we go. Cool.
All right. So the very last section, and we're running super short on time, so I'll be brief, is data cleanup in risks. So the first item I wanted to cover is merging procedures. So we have duplicate procedures. In RIS, we can fix that by going to orders and then view procedures. And you'll want to search for, make sure both of your duplicate procedures are down here. And what we do is these menu items right here don't really have titles, but if you hover your mouse over them, you can see what they are. So we're going to merge procedures right here with this button. And we're going to select the 2 procedures that we are going to merge. So I'm just going to select those 2, click the merge procedures, just verify that they're correct. And the way this works is the procedure on the left is what I like to call the keeper. That's all of the information that we're going to end up with after we merge this procedure. And the procedure on the right is the duplicate. So, and if they get swapped, there's this button right here. So you can move them back and forth. So the keeper's on the left. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and just scan this information between the 2 of them and make sure that we're not missing information on the keeper, information that maybe is over here on the duplicate. And right now it looks okay to me. If we did have something, let's say we had something in one of these fields in the duplicate that I need to move over to the keeper, I would just simply click the arrow. If there's something in the keeper that I don't want, I just click the X to get rid of it, like that. And there's a nice undo button in case I accidentally did that. And then all I would do is click save, and your procedure's merged. The next item I wanted to show is how to change a patient ID in RIS. So for some reason, PACS hasn't updated the patient ID here in RIS. So we are going to go to admin and change patient ID. So what we're going to do here is we just want to make sure we select the proper patient group. We're going to search. Search for the proper patient that needs the ID changed. Just verify that's the right patient, and we're going to change the patient ID here. And there you go. Save it, and you're done. Not too bad. The second item I want to show you is how to merge patients. So to do that, we're going to go to Records and then Merge Patients. And this is very similar to merging procedures. So we are going to search for duplicates. All right, so you just find your your duplicate patient, the two that need to be merged, and since this is a test server, I'm just going to select two of them. Merge patients. Once again, we have the keeper on the left. We have the duplicate on the right. If they're swapped, you can click the swap button. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down, verify that all of the necessary information is on the keeper. If I need to, I can move stuff over and then save, and your patient is merged. The last two items have to do with HL7 and reports. So I'm going to show you how to retrigger a report HL7 message. And to do that, it is under reports and then diagnostic reports. And I've only got these two in here to work with, which is fine. So all I do is single left click on one to retrigger the HL7 report. I am going to click on HL7 notification. Now in my test system, it doesn't do anything because we don't have any interfaces built, but being the good guy that I am, I took a screenshot of what it's supposed to look like. What you will see is the different HL7 messages available in a dropdown. You will choose the ORU. You should only have one, and it is titled Report Modified. So when you click that HL7 notification, you'll get this little pop-up here, and you'll select the ORU Report Modified, and then you'll say OK. And that resends the HL7 message. The last item I wanted to show you was how to refinalize a report. So when we fix mistakes and we change information, we update a patient ID, anything that might end up on the finalized report, well, that report is a snapshot of when the report went finalized. So it could have some incorrect information on it. So all we do is single left click on, you search for the proper report, obviously, single left click and refinalize report. And you're done. And that is all I have. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for being here, guys. Again, in the chat, I put the email if you have any questions that haven't been answered or any that come up later. Make sure you just email us at usergroupquestions@novarad.net. Thank you all for being here.